Welcome everyone. Happy New Year. To get us off to a good start, in the first episode of 2025, I will be sharing my new and improved potting mix recipe. 4 years ago, I shared the first potting mix recipe using Promix BX, coarse perlite, and a few other ingredients. I used it for a couple of years and then decided to simplify it, keeping only the Promix BX and perlite base, adding systemic insecticide granules, and skipping everything else. The violets continued to grow relatively well without the extra ingredients, and all blooming plants shown in my monthly blooms videos of 2024 and some of 2023 were growing in the simplified mix. Some of these here in front of you are also growing in just the mixture of Promix BX and coarse perlite with the systemic insecticide and nothing else. These are all grown using the wick watering method, and of course they receive the fertilizer on the continuous feed through the mixture of fertilizers and water that is in the reservoirs. Most recently, I've been using two kinds of fertilizers. The balanced fertilizer Jax Classic, all-purpose with 20-20-20 NPK ratio, and it's called balanced because it has equal proportions of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And Dynagrow Orchid Pro, urea-free fertilizer with 7-8-6 NPK ratio. I limit the Jax Classic use to warm growing period because most of its nitrogen component is urea based, and it is known to be temperature dependent, slowing down its breakdown in the cool growing season. And here you can see the contents of nitrogen, and it says it has 17.9% urea nitrogen. So during fall, winter, and early spring, I would switch to urea-free Dynagrow Orchid Pro 786. There are various urea-free fertilizers on the market. I chose this one because the NPK ratio here is the closest match to the balanced one. It's not equal proportions of NPK, but it's close. And also because it contains microelements, just like Jax Classic here. And here's the guaranteed analysis on the reverse label showing the elements that it has. And these microelements are very good to have for African violets and other plants for healthy growth. Even though I have been following the consistent fertilizing routine with both potting mix recipes, I have been observing that the plants slowed down nutrient intake from fertilized water over time and required frequent repotting as they were gradually beginning to look starved for nutrients a few months later. Here, for example, you see a sport of a variety called funambule, and the central leaves clearly display the nutrient deficiency symptoms, growing much smaller than they would normally grow in this variety when it grows healthy. So this time I thought of modifying the original recipe by adding a few extras to give them a little more TLC. I know people watch my channel in many countries, so for those watching outside of the United States, TLC stands for Tender Loving Care. Do comment under this video what country are you watching from. I love seeing how many African violet enthusiasts are out there in the world. Now I will cover the ingredients that I kept from the original potting mix, the new mystery ingredients added, and then one ingredient that I had removed, and I'll explain why. After this, we'll make a fresh batch using the new recipe. First, I'll talk about the components that I kept from the original recipe. So for peat moss, I'm using the same brand, Promix, except this is a different variety. In the past, I used Promix BX, and now I'm using Promix HP. HP stands for high porosity because it has a little more perlite than the BX variety. So in this one, the contents is sphagnum peat moss 65 to 75%. It also has horticultural perlite, It has the pH adjuster, dolomitic and calcitic limestone. It has biofungicide to prevent diseases. It's called Bacillus pumilus. And also a good thing about this variety that it has mycorrhizae, and the particular species that it has is called Glomus interradices. It is also known as Rhizophagus irregularis, and Rhizophagus irregularis has been found to increase phosphorus intake as well as improve soil aggregation. Because of these qualities, Rhizophagus irregularis is commonly used in mycorrhizae-based fertilizers. Then I'm using coarse perlite, just like in the previous original mix. And this particular variety, I'm just buying in my local hydroponics store. And it is natural volcanic perlite. And also, when I buy my perlite, I make sure that the packaging says that it's a coarse perlite. So if we look here on the side here, it says coarse propagation grade. I'm also keeping the dry molasses. So this is not coffee. This is actually where I store my dry molasses. And I use it to feed the mycorrhizae, the ones that come with the Promix HP. And also I'll be adding some extra mycorrhizae in this recipe, which I will cover in a minute. Horticultural charcoal. It's an optional component, but it is beneficial because it's known to improve the drainage, prevent root rot by absorbing excess moisture, neutralize toxins and chemicals in the soil, and reduce the risks of fungal growth due to its antimicrobial properties. Essentially, it acts as a buffer against overwatering and creates a more aerated environment for roots. And of course, I'm keeping systemic granules insect control by Bonide. There are other varieties out there on the market produced by other brands, but essential here is that the main ingredient is imidacloprid at 0.22%, and it's known to prevent aphids, thrips, mealybugs, and the application ratio here is on the label, so it's very simple, no guessing. 1 gallon of potting mix calls for 2.5 tablespoons of the Bonide systemic granules. Now on to the new components, which I hope will be the improvements to the potting mix. Time will tell. Of course, I'll show you how plants react in future monthly blooms videos. The main component in the Promix and many other potting mixes, peat moss, is known to help soil retain nutrients and help plants grow healthier, but it barely contains any nutrients on its own. The only nutrients my plants were receiving with the previous potting mix were the ones coming with those fertilizers that I showed you earlier. So this time I introduced some nutrients directly into the potting mix by adding granules of slow-release urea-free fertilizer called Osmocote. There are a couple of different varieties on the market, and I'm using the one called Flower and Vegetable, and it is known to be a balanced fertilizer with the equal NPK proportions. And you can see here on the label, it shows the NPK ratio at 14, 14, and 14. It slowly releases the fertilizer for up to 4 months. It comes with a no burn guarantee, and I'm hoping it will work with wicked plants. Time will tell. The application rate here is 1 cupful per 2 gallons of potting mix. So for 1 gallon, it's half a cupful. I've also seen another Osmocote variety for indoor and outdoor plants. It is not balanced, meaning that it has different proportions of NPK at 15, 9, and 12. It has 2 advantages over this variety. It contains some microelements and it feeds plants for a longer period, up to 6 months. And this one lasts for up to 4 months. The reason I chose the balanced variety is because I've read that African violets respond well to balanced fertilizers in particular. I talk more about this in my fertilizing video that I made earlier. I will include a link to it in the description box if you'd like to check it out later. I will see how this one works out for my plants first, and then maybe we'll try another one to compare. Because this one doesn't have any microelements, I will continue using the same fertilizer I showed earlier to water my plants, because both Jack's Classic and the urea-free Dynagrow Orchid Pro 786 contain the microelements that African violets need for healthy growth. In addition to the slow-release fertilizer, I also wanted to improve the potting mix composition by adding the minerals that would exist when violet ancestors grew in the wild, in the rocky soil of the Usambara Mountains in Tanzania. The natural mineral soil amendment that I was able to find is called azomite trace minerals with 0.0 NPK ratio. Azomite is a natural mineral product mined in central Utah. It formed as a deposit when an ancient volcano erupted and its ash settled into a prehistoric seabed, creating a complex mineral composition. Of course, it is local to the United States rather than Africa, but the hope is that it might have some of the mineral elements that exist in the mountainous soils elsewhere. Coincidentally, I saw that azomite was recently recommended as a beneficial soil additive by the African Violet Society of America, so this was indeed a lucky find for me. Azomite is known to improve plant and root system growth by remineralizing nutrient-depleted soils. It can be blended with other fertilizer materials and can be applied directly or in combination with fertilizers and soil inoculants. The contents and the application method is listed on the reverse. So here's what it has in it. It has soluble potash, calcium, magnesium, and sodium, and it is recommended to apply at 1 or 2 tablespoons per gallon of soil. So I will be adding 1 tablespoon per gallon of my potting mix. And finally, I will be adding some extra mycorrhizae to this new potting mix recipe. ProMix potting mix, as I showed earlier, already has some mycorrhizae in it, but only one species. This time I decided to add some additional species of mycorrhizae fungi. Quality mycorrhizal blends containing beneficial bacteria are known to help break down the fertilizer elements present in water or potting mix for the plant's root intake. The variety I found is called Petra Tools Mycogiant mycorrhizal fungi. I don't know if it's available on the market right now. It is an ultra concentrated blend of over 10 species of mycorrhizal fungi selected specifically to increase rooting and improve nutrient intake. There are many other varieties of mycorrhizal blends on the market, so if this one is not available, feel free to substitute. And I skipped one ingredient, as I mentioned earlier, so I used it in the original recipe 4 years ago, and it was the diatomaceous earth. I mostly was adding it for its insecticide properties, but those are known to work only on dry surfaces, whereas my wick-watered mix remains always moist. As a result, the fine powder of diatomaceous earth made my potting mix more compact by clogging the air pockets needed for healthy root growth and making the plant roots struggle for air. All right, so let's make a fresh batch of the new potting mix together. I will be using a container with lid for storage, and I will be using a spoon to mix. So I'm not planning to get in direct contact with the ingredients. Otherwise, please protect your hands with gloves. And also when working with perlite, it's helpful to wear a mask. First, I'll use 2 quarts of ProMix HP, 2 quarts of coarse perlite. Most of it is coarse, but of course there's some smaller fraction as always. Now I mix it well before bringing it inside. One cup of charcoal, horticultural. For propagation repotting, when I just separate babies from leaves, I skip charcoal because the pieces of charcoal I think are too, even though they're small, but they're still too large for baby roots to kind of work around them. So I start adding charcoal when repotting starters and mature plants. The concentrated mycorrhizal blend, 1/4 teaspoon is enough because it's ultra concentrated. Next go dry molasses to feed the mycorrhizae. We can put 1 or a couple of teaspoons. Let's do 2 teaspoons today. A half of cup full of Osmocote. 1 tablespoon of azomite. And 2.5 tablespoons of bonite granules. Now mix well to evenly distribute all the ingredients. And at the end, add 3 to 4 cups of warm water. I start with a little over than 2 cups and then just see how much else it needs. I kind of eyeball it because sometimes it doesn't need 4 cups of water, it just needs 3, and sometimes it even needs only 2 cups of water to kind of make it evenly moistened. And a lot of mixing needs to happen before the water can go through the entire mix. So I think this one will take another cup, so it's going to be 3 cups total. The 3rd cup goes in. Now mix well again. The key here is to make it lightly moist but not sogging wet. Now it's all ready. Cover it with lid. Store overnight, and next day it will be ready to use. It's been a month since I started using this mix, and the plants have responded well so far. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Happy growing!